gates of Manila North Cemetery closed at 6 p.m. Everyone in Manila knew that. But that never stopped teenagers from sneaking in. It started as a dare. 5 friends, Marco, Jessa, Carlo, Nina, and Paolo, were hanging out one humid Friday night when Carlo pulled up a video on his phone. "Look," he said, grinning. "Urban explorers say they hear voices inside the cemetery after midnight." Jessa rolled her eyes. "That's fake." "Then let's prove it," Carlo challenged. Marco laughed. "You want us to break into a cemetery?" "Not break in," Carlo said. "Just climb the wall." Paolo hesitated. "People live there, you know. Families, caretakers." "Exactly," Carlo said. "So what's scary about it?" Nina looked at the video again. Dark mausoleums. Narrow pathways between tombs. Something about it made her uneasy, but she didn't want to look scared. "Fine," she said. "Let's go." At 12 a.m., they reached the massive gates of Manila North Cemetery. The streets outside were empty. Only a flickering streetlight and the rustling of trees. Carlo pointed to a low section of the wall. There, one by one, they climbed over. When Marco landed on the other side, the air felt different. Thick, still. Rows and rows of tombs stretched into darkness. Some were stacked like tiny houses. Others were massive marble crypts. It looked like a silent city of the dead. Paolo whispered, "Okay, this is creepy." Carlo turned on his flashlight. "Relax. Let's explore." They walked deeper into the cemetery. At first, it was almost normal. A small stray dog barked somewhere in the distance. A faint radio played from a caretaker's house far away. But after 10 minutes, even those sounds disappeared. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until the only thing they could hear was their own footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Then Nina stopped. "Wait," everyone froze. "Did you hear that?" Marco frowned. "Hear what?" "Footsteps." Paolo laughed nervously. "Those are ours." Nina shook her head. "No, behind us." They turned. The path behind them was empty, just rows of graves disappearing into darkness. Carlo shined his flashlight. "Nothing. See," he said, "just your imagination." But as they turned back, Marco realized something. "Guys," he said slowly, "where is Jessa?" They spun around. She had been walking right behind them seconds ago. Now she was gone. "Jessa," Nina called. No answer. Carlo shouted, "Stop messing around." Silence. Paolo's voice trembled. "She wouldn't just disappear." Marco raised his phone flashlight. "Spread out. She's probably hiding." So they searched. Between tombs, behind crypts, down narrow pathways. "Jessa, come on, this isn't funny." Then Carlo found something. "Guys, come here." On the ground near a mausoleum was Jessa's phone. The screen was cracked, still recording video. Marco picked it up. The footage played automatically. At first, it showed the group walking through the cemetery, laughing, talking. Then the camera turned toward Jessa's face. She looked confused. Guys, she said in the video. The camera slowly turned behind her. The screen filled with darkness. Then a tall shadow moved between the graves. Too tall, too thin. The camera shook violently. Jessa screamed. The video ended. Nobody spoke. Paolo whispered, "We need to leave." Immediately, they started walking back the way they came. Faster now, but the cemetery looked different. The paths twisted strangely. Tombs they didn't remember seeing stood in front of them. "Was this here before?" Nina asked. Marco shook his head. "No." Then Carlo stopped walking. "Guys," his flashlight pointed ahead. About 20 meters away, someone was standing between the graves. Long arms, bent posture, watching them. Paolo whispered, "That's not Jessa." The thing slowly stepped forward. Its limbs stretched unnaturally long. Its head tilted too far to one side. Then it spoke, in Jessa's voice. "Guys, wait," Nina screamed. They ran, past rows of tombs, through narrow corridors between graves. But every path led deeper inside, and behind them, more voices began calling. Jessa's voice, from different directions. "Marco, Paolo, help me." Marco glanced back once. He wished he hadn't, because between the tombs, he saw dozens of tall shadows moving, walking, crawling, emerging from the graves. The next morning, a caretaker found a phone lying near a mausoleum. The police searched the cemetery, but they never found Marco, Nina, Carlo, or Paolo. Only one piece of footage remained on Marco's phone. The camera faced the ground, their footsteps running, heavy breathing, then Marco whispering in terror. "They're coming out of the graves." And right before the video ended, a voice, right next to the microphone, whispered, "Stay with us." A week after the disappearance of the 5 friends inside Manila North Cemetery, the story spread across Manila. Marco, Nina, Carlo, Paolo, Jessa, 5 teenagers, all gone. The police searched the cemetery for days. They found nothing. No bodies, no signs of struggle, only 2 phones, and one terrifying video. The investigation was handed to Inspector Daniel Reyes of the Philippine National Police. Daniel had seen many strange cases in Manila, but this one felt wrong. People went missing sometimes, but 5 people at once, inside a cemetery, that was different. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in the evidence room, watching the recovered footage again. The shaky video showed the friends running between graves, breathing heavily. Marco whispering in panic, "They're coming out of the graves." Then the camera turned briefly, just for a second. Daniel paused the video, zoomed in. There, between the tombs, a tall shadow, too thin, its arms stretching unnaturally long, and behind it, more shapes. Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. 2 nights later, Daniel stood outside the iron gates of Manila North Cemetery. It was 1 a.m. The caretaker had refused to go inside with him. "Sir, after midnight, the old man whispered nervously. Some paths change, Daniel sighed. You're telling me the cemetery rearranges itself. The caretaker didn't answer. Daniel stepped through the gate alone. The cemetery at night felt like a different world. Rows of mausoleums towered like silent buildings. Tiny houses sat on top of tombs where families sometimes lived. But tonight, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel turned on his flashlight and walked deeper into the cemetery. Crunch, crunch. His footsteps echoed between graves. After 10 minutes of walking, he reached the area where the teenagers were last seen. The place looked ordinary, just hundreds of tombs. But something caught his attention. One grave was cracked open. The stone lid had shifted slightly, as if something had pushed from below. Daniel knelt and shined his flashlight inside. Darkness. Then a faint sound. Whispering, Daniel froze. Help, his heart skipped. Hello, he called. The whisper came again. Down here, Daniel slowly pushed the lid aside. The smell that came out was terrible. Rotting earth. Something old. He shined the flashlight deeper. The grave was deeper than normal, like a tunnel, and the walls were scratched. Daniel swallowed hard. Then a hand shot out of the darkness, grabbing his wrist. Daniel nearly screamed, but then he heard the voice clearly. Help me, it was Marco, pale, covered in dirt, his eyes wide with terror. Daniel pulled him out of the grave. Marco collapsed on the ground, shaking. Where are the others? Daniel asked quickly. Marco looked behind him in horror. They're still down there, Daniel frowned. Down where? Marco pointed into the open grave. Under the cemetery, Marco explained between panicked breaths. When they ran that night, the ground suddenly opened beneath them. Old tunnels, endless tunnels under the graves, but they weren't empty. There are things down there, Marco whispered. Tall things. They crawl between the graves. Daniel looked back at the dark tunnel. You're telling me something lives under this cemetery? Marco nodded slowly. They watch people who come at night. Daniel's flashlight flickered. Then a sound echoed from the tunnel. Footsteps, slow, dragging. Marco grabbed Daniel's arm in terror. They're coming. Daniel aimed his flashlight down the hole. Something moved in the darkness. 2 long arms appeared first. Then a thin body climbing upward. Its limbs bent like broken branches. Its head slowly turned toward them. Its mouth opened, and it spoke in Jessa's voice. Marco, Marco screamed. Daniel grabbed him and ran. They sprinted through rows of tombs. But behind them, more figures began crawling out of graves. Dozens, tall, thin, their joints bending the wrong way, and each one whispering in the voices of the missing friends. Stay with us. Don't leave. We're still down here. Marco looked back once and saw something that haunted him forever. Because among the creatures he saw Nina, walking slowly, eyes empty, smiling. The next morning, the police searched the cemetery again, but they never found the tunnel. The cracked grave was completely sealed, like it had never opened. Marco was the only survivor, but he refused to ever go near the cemetery again, because sometimes at night, when he tries to sleep, he hears scratching under the floor and the voices of his friends whispering softly, "Marco, come back. We're still under the graves." After Marco was rescued, the authorities tried to close the case. Mass hysteria, some said. Trauma, others insisted. But Inspector Daniel Reyes knew better. Marco hadn't imagined the tunnels, because Daniel had heard the whispers too, and he couldn't forget the thing that climbed out of the grave, using Jessa's voice. The reports were sealed by the Philippine National Police, but Daniel kept one piece of evidence for himself: Marco's phone. The last video recorded inside Manila North Cemetery. For nights, Daniel replayed the footage, looking for something he missed. Then he noticed something horrifying. In the background of the video, the shadows weren't random. They were moving in groups, like a crowd. 3 nights later, Daniel returned to the cemetery. But this time, he came prepared. Flashlight, camera, rope, and a decision. If something was down there, he was going to find it. It was 2 a.m. when Daniel reached the same grave where Marco had escaped. At first, everything looked normal. The stone lid was sealed tightly, but Daniel noticed something new. Fresh scratches on the surface, like something had tried to claw its way out again. Daniel pushed the lid aside slowly. The tunnel was still there, black, deep, silent, except for one faint sound: breathing. Daniel tied the rope around a nearby tomb and lowered himself into the hole. The smell underground was worse than before: damp earth, rot, and something else, something ancient. His flashlight beam revealed a narrow tunnel stretching forward beneath the graves. Daniel stepped carefully through the dirt passage. After a few minutes, the tunnel widened, then widened again, until suddenly Daniel stepped into something impossible. A cavern, huge, far bigger than the cemetery above. His flashlight trembled as he looked around. What he saw made his heart stop. Thousands of graves, but not above ground, below it. Old stone coffins, collapsed tombs, bones scattered everywhere. It was like another cemetery buried beneath the first, a city of the dead under Manila. And then Daniel realized something worse. The ground was covered in footprints, not human ones, long, thin, dragging. Daniel heard something behind him, a whisper. "You came back." He turned slowly. Standing in the shadows were the creatures Marco described. Tall, hollow, their arms almost touching the ground, their heads twitching unnaturally, and behind them more shapes, dozens, hundreds. Daniel backed away slowly. "What are you?" One creature stepped forward. Its face slowly shifted, skin stretching, until it looked like Jessa. "We were people once," the voice echoed through the cavern. Before the cemetery, Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The creature tilted its head. Before the city, before Manila, Daniel felt cold realization creep through him. The cemetery hadn't been built on empty land. It had been built on top of something else, something older, something that had been buried for centuries. The creature's smile widened. Now the dead feed us, Daniel's flashlight flickered. And in the dim light, he saw the worst thing of all. People. Hundreds of people. Standing in the darkness behind the creatures. Some were missing persons. Some looked decades old. All pale, all silent, all watching him. Then he saw Marco's friends, Nina, Carlo, Paolo, standing among them, their eyes empty, waiting. No one leaves, the creature whispered. The cavern suddenly filled with movement. The creatures began crawling toward him, from the walls, from broken graves, from tunnels in every direction. Daniel ran, back toward the rope, back toward the surface. The scratching and crawling behind him grew louder. Hands grabbed at his legs. Voices whispered all around him. Stay, stay with us. Join the cemetery. Daniel climbed the rope as fast as he could. Just as the creatures reached the tunnel entrance, he pulled himself out and slammed the grave lid shut. The scratching from below was immediate, violent. Daniel stumbled backward in terror. Then something beneath the grave spoke softly, in Marco's voice. You can't close the city. The ground shook slightly. And Daniel realized something that made his blood run cold. The cemetery above wasn't just a graveyard. It was a lid, holding something underground, something huge. The next morning, Daniel disappeared. His report was never filed. His equipment was never recovered. But months later, construction workers expanding a road near Manila North Cemetery reported strange noises beneath the ground, scratching, whispering, and sometimes, late at night, people passing the cemetery swear they hear hundreds of voices beneath the earth, all whispering the same thing. The city below is growing, and soon there will be no more room in the graves.